to turn the time over first to John. John, please introduce yourself. Tell us about your role and about this company, Zoom.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you to the Tech Home Builder Summit for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the panel here with Carol and Blake. We have virtually here. My name is John Stearns, and I work for a company you probably never heard of before the pandemic, but is an everyday name, so Zoom. Everyone really knows us as the video meetings app that kind of helped schools and businesses keep things together during the pandemic. But we are a full platform of technology. So certainly video conferencing, meetings and webinars and events, cloud phone systems and contact center is a big part of what we also do. My area of responsibility is our Zoom Rooms and Workspace solutions, which kind of brings the Zoom experience to life in office buildings, at home, in schools, et cetera. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Been in the industry, the video conferencing industry, for about 17 years now. Worked for everything from tech startups to global corporations like Cisco Systems. And I lead a team of Zoom Rooms specialists here in the Americas that help our clients with safely returning back to the office and the classroom and just really preparing for the future of hybrid work and hybrid learning. So we're headquartered in San Jose. I call Philadelphia home with my wife and my two sons. So happy to be here.
And you're not just a name, you're a verb. I mean, it's amazing to see a company that, by show of hands, prior to March 2020, how many of you had heard Zoom before? Okay, no, good, pretty high percentage. I'm imagining most of you must have had kids or something that you had Zoom before. I know for myself, and I'm gonna take a little moment here, I'd spent 2 decades in industry and had used Cisco, WebEx, GoToMeeting. And when I started teaching as an adjunct instructor at Kansas State University on all the computers, they had this application called Zoom. And I'm like, what is this application? Don't they know there's actually business class web conferencing solutions out there? Till like the first time that I used it. And I was like, whoa, this is so much easier than all the other applications that I've used in the past. And so it was no surprise that when the pandemic hit, it definitely took off. Lots of things we're gonna talk about with Zoom, which is amazing. And the next speaker that we have is joining us virtually, is Blake Band. It's gonna feel like he's here in the room with us. It's gonna feel like he's zooming in. He's actually not. These are pre-recorded segments, but I'm gonna do my best to make it feel like he's here in the room. But I will point out, these pre-recorded segments were done on Zoom. So here, Blake, would you be willing to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role and your company?
Hey there, my name is Blake Band. I work for StreetSense. We are a design and marketing collective. We build brands that people love and places that people love to be. I've been working here for over 7 years and touch different accounts for our clients around gaming as well as multifamily.
And I'm going to, so that John doesn't stress, the video feed that we're seeing up here and what we're seeing are different. It is actually synced to what everyone else is seeing, just not what we're seeing.
Okay, great.
And then I had a follow-up for Blake when I talked to him. Blake, how did you get into gaming?
Well, I definitely grew up a gamer, like many kids of the 90s, whether it was N64 or some of the predecessors. But as many things happen in the advertising and marketing world, it's what the clients ask for. StreetSense is the agency of record for social media for Logitech, one of the leading computer peripheral providers. So I've been supporting that account from the Logitech G side, which is their gaming peripheral brand. So really just use it as an opportunity to learn more about the industry, and for one that it's flourished in the recent years. So have just gotten deeper and deeper into that world since.
So terrific. Our next individual, we already got to meet this morning. Carol, anything else you want to add particularly as we're talking about shared spaces today that you think is going to be relevant to your background?
Yeah, just if I didn't see you this morning, I'm Carol Van Hook with Akara Partners. I'm helping launch a brand called Connect from the ground up. It's a nationwide social club with apartments, co-working, and a full-blown social club. So it's a really active building. In this segment, we're going to be really talking about how we are bringing in niche groups to monetize on all of our social spaces and providing really awesome experiences, as well as gamification in the future. So nice to see you guys again.
All right, so we're going to start off asking a question to John. And we've already touched on how Zoom rose like a meteor over the last 2 years and went from something that was primarily used in the academic world to the business world to probably many of us started using it in our personal lives. I remember several times during the pandemic having a family reunion where we had my grandma and grandpa and then all the grandkids all joining from all across the United States and having the opportunity to have a substitute for face-to-face contact when the current situations didn't allow for it. So I want to ask John, how do you think the future of work and learning has changed? And then what trends are you seeing for where this is all going, especially as it relates to the multifamily shared spaces?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, it's certainly been a crazy couple of years. I think Zoom and Teams and Google Meet and others really changed the game and stepped up and kept organizations afloat during all of this. Kind of coming out of it, I talk to customers all day, every day about where does this all go? What does hybrid look like? And that's the most consistent strategy I hear is everyone needs to really embrace hybrid, right? Hybrid work, hybrid learning. I think if we probably took a poll and asked 20 of you what hybrid work or hybrid learning is, I think we'd probably get 20 different answers because that's the big thing is right now everyone's focused on trying to find a balance. And that balance might differ for industry or company culture, but there is a point where people can be productive. They've proven to be productive, over the last couple of years, whether they're students or workers or leaders. So they've proven that, but there obviously is value in meeting and being together in person. So people can get work done at home, but they don't necessarily have all the space to do that, right? If there's a family that has two parents working, or their students all of a sudden have to attend virtual classes. Not every home or dwelling has 4 shared private offices and stuff like that. So there definitely represents some challenges there. What we're seeing on the kind of traditional office side is trying to make workplaces and buildings more exciting to try to get people to want to come back into the office, at least to spend part of their week. And that means the offices need to look a lot different, right? Less dedicated cubicles, more open collaborative workstations and flex areas and things like that. And I see that really coming to the multifamily scenarios as well, right? Those common areas that are in these condos and apartment buildings and things like that are going to need to accommodate both kids and adults to get their work done, to be able to attend school, to entertain them, to bring gaming into these common areas. And I think these spaces need to be flexible and accommodating and not intimidating. That's the biggest thing. They need to, invite people in.
Yeah, I know we'll talk a bit later about, some of the ingredients for good conferencing, like light and sound and stuff like that. But to add to that, from an educational point of view, even though our university has allowed students to come back into the classroom full capacity, what I found over the last 2.5 years has been that so many students gave me feedback on how much they appreciated the flexibility of joining via Zoom that I've continued to do that as a high flex option where I will teach in person, but also simulcast on Zoom so students can choose. Now, it's been interesting over that time to see students learn about their own learning behaviors because very early on, all of them were like, oh, Zoom, awesome. And then realized I'm not learning anything and I'm paying a whole lot of tuition, that many of them kind of bounced back. And then now I'm seeing this equilibrium where some are saying, you know what, I've found for my own learning style, I actually do better on Zoom. There's less distractions, I can focus. Others have been like, I can't do it on Zoom, I've got to be in person. And I think we're seeing a generation that is learning how to find the right balance of when do I need to be in person, but also recognizing there's extreme value in being able to jump on a web conference call and to be present that way as well. I know I appreciate it in a lot of, I'm involved in a nonprofit board and other places where meetings in the past where I used to have to drive to it, be there, be fully dedicated to that, and miss things with my family, that a lot of times now we're doing it on Teams. Great. I'm going to a baseball game. I can give enough effort to be on the meeting, but also be able to see Johnny when he's hitting a home run. And I think our world is evolving that way, that giving individuals the freedom and the flexibility to be able to use this, there's great value there.
Yeah, and just one more comment on that. I think organizations need to be careful with over-rotating back, right? Whether it's schools or businesses, and trying to mandate that employees or students come back 100%, they'll go elsewhere. I mean, it's been, there's been all sorts of studies where it's like, people have gotten accustomed to the, just being able to have no commute and be productive and things like that. There's certainly reasons to go into the office, but if you try to over-rotate and mandate it, I think it's going to backfire on a lot of organizations.
Absolutely. So. And you're going to see that within your own organizations, and you're going to see that with your customers as well, the way, where they're choosing to live and what benefits they're seeing where they live are going to reflect this new mentality. So we're going to do kind of round robin today. We've kind of got 3 different topics that are going to occasionally touch, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to conferencing, we're going to go to gaming, then we're going to talk to Carol and see how we're putting into action live, shared spaces, and then kind of go around the horn a couple times is the plan. So what I'd like to do now is bounce it over to, I just lost my notes here. Of course, there we go. To Blake. So Blake, when we look at amenity spaces, how can they or should they be evolving to match the rise in gaming? Is there any developer? Oh yeah, so we'll start there. So how do we see it revolve in gaming?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think the rise of gaming cannot be ignored. It's truly exploded, especially since 2020. I think the average gamer spends almost 8.5 hours a week gaming these days. I think developers and people who are looking to build shared spaces should really think about the full building as a community that has both inclusive and exclusive spaces. So people are really starting to treat apartment buildings and different common spaces and using them to their fullest extent. But then there's also the desire for people to have some secluded spaces, whether that's for them to play a game alone or to hop on a work call. So I think a good mix of sort of inclusive and exclusive spaces tied into amenity spaces are going to be really important for people.
So we've got a slide here that kind of shows some of the data that Blake shared with us with respect to how much this industry is growing, the amount of time that people who are gamers are spending gaming, and then what that demographic looks like. So a follow-up question for Blake is, specifically, are there any developers, builders, or spaces that you think are on the cutting edge when it comes to this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we definitely spend a lot of time in designing really interesting spaces for our clients at StreetSense. One that we've touched on is the Wren, located in DC, and that really worked to bring sort of the natural to the indoors, but really making interesting and comfortable spaces for people. I think as far as technology and what people are bringing from an entertainment perspective, we've certainly seen a lot of different projects. I think not necessarily falling for the gimmicks and what's in the moment is really important, but there are a lot of shifting tendencies for people. A lot of pet-driven amenities are some of the top things. So I think it just sort of goes back to the idea of people needing convenience. And then as it relates to gaming, I think there's definitely trends that you can think about and tap into. The rise of different things like Nintendo Switch and co-op playing with different people, as well as even sim racing, where people have full setup racing wheels. One could say that could be the future of the golf simulator today.
So Blake, you mentioned that sometimes developers may kind of go a little bit in the wrong direction. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about some examples where you've seen that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to amenities and what grabs people to check out a building, there are definitely a lot of things that developers can do to sort of jump off the page and get the headline, say a rock climbing wall or overly extravagant fitness centers. Those are huge expenditures and investments, especially if you're looking to sell a building in case that future developers have different plans. So I think thinking truly about what your demographic is looking forward to the most and what's most convenient to them is truly most important for how you should outline your building. And if you do have a concentrated number of, let's say, younger people in school or just outside of school, then factoring into those habits of what a gamer is doing and what they would like is truly really important.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we're going to switch now to Carol. We got to learn a lot about your properties this morning with respect to service and maintenance, but now we get to see a little bit about shared spaces. So I'm gonna hand the clicker over to you because I know we got a whole bunch of photos that you get to
How do I
go
do this
through.
thing?
Just the big green button.
Okay.
And tell us a little bit about, because we only scratched the surface on what you're
Right.
doing at Akara. Can you tell us about your philosophy regarding shared spaces and give us a little bit of a tour?
Absolutely. So as you can see, this is our cutout sheet of Connect Phoenix. This is actually one of our smaller co-working spaces because Nashville is 16,000 square feet. It's actually 2 stories. So we have a much broader layout of our sheet there with private office pods, dedicated desks, phone booths, podcast room, meditation rooms, timeout rooms is what we call them. There's no electricity in these rooms. It's just an area you can go and take a call. But as you can see, as you walk through, this is the Phoenix one. There's rentable boardrooms here. There's open float co-working, which is what ours is kind of an aquatic theme. So you'll see a dedicated dock desk, boardroom. They all have fun names to them as well. But also the community kitchen. So we're really creating kind of these inspiring spaces to work. And if you're familiar with, the WeWorks and the Industriouses, yeah, it's quite similar, but to be a multifamily housing owner, developer, and manager, we are managing this in-house, and we're creating it and keeping it under our brand of how we want to develop. And all these spaces, we have $40 day passes. So when you're driving, for a perfect example, I had a girl driving through from Birmingham. She stopped in Nashville and got a $40 day pass, and that includes fitness, access to the pool, and access to co-working. So she can enjoy a really nice, inspiring place to work. You never know who you're gonna meet at the coffee machine. So creating these mixed use of spaces with services and experience in a great location right in the heart of the city is really what we're doing. And let me go to the next slide here. Our outdoor spaces. So we are really utilizing those rooftop spaces, just, like a lot of people are. And we also have our mid-level amenity decks as well. And we activate these spaces constantly because we are a social club. So by, partnering with these small groups, versus the really big employers and, trying to bring the Deloittes and Amazons to your property, we're actually partnering with small music groups and women's groups or small sports clubs, small organizations, and they are renting our spaces to use this to create social content, to have their gatherings, their meetings, and we're bringing them to our property and just getting so much social engagement from there because this is the first time they're coming here. Somebody might be moving to the area. You never know whose nephew is moving to town. So word of mouth for us is really important. This is the Phoenix Gym, so also shared spaces that come with being a co-working member with us. Now, in addition to having this at, let's say you live at the property, or maybe you work in downtown Phoenix or downtown Nashville, and you just need a co-working space because you want to work from home, but maybe not from home. And this is really a great place to come and be able to use the fitness centers, the pools on the weekends. If you have a small company, you can get company culture built right in versus just renting an office space from Regis, right? This has really cool networking events, awesome pool parties. When you're off work for the weekends, you can come here because you're a member. And actually we call people members versus residents. And once we are all over, you can be a traveling member and be able to use any of these spaces when you travel because Connect is built for the traveling professional. So once you're a member, let's say you live in Nashville and you're in Phoenix for the day, you'll be able to swipe right in and use the amenity spaces, use the gym, use the pool, use the conference rooms if you need to. So these are just some photos here. Big community spaces, open floor plan with the floating co-working is really popular. It's a great price point. These are around $299 a month to be a floating co-working member. We do have some dedicated desks, which is where, let's call it like reserved parking. That's your desk where you sit every day. They all go up and down. And, those would typically probably be starting around the $450 per month. But again, you're getting that whole value and that whole membership to go anywhere you want in the United States to use the co-working facility and get the same services that you would at any Connect. We even smell the same. We have our own scent. And our uniforms are band tees and blazers. So all of our staff are in like concert t-shirts and stuff. And going into really honing in on these niche groups to create engaging events that we're talking about, bringing people together in collaborative spaces, hosting, these small events is what's really making us stand out from the competition.
Excellent. Some things we talked about this before. It's clear in a lot of your construction design. It's very industrial. You've got the concrete, open beams, open piping, and thankfully that's in the trend right now.
Right.
What are some of the pros associated with that design? What are some of the drawbacks to that?
Sure. And we get this all the time. And actually, when I came over to this product, I was like, we're moving in 2 weeks. Why isn't the ceiling finished? They're like, Carol, that's actually just the vibe, And so once we, put that into our branding and, when we're selling the product, it's fine. But to see kind of the architectural marks and things on the ceiling, it's just part of the vibe. I think the pros is that, we're not stick built, we're concrete, and it helps with a lot of soundproofing in between the floors, which we all know everybody complains about sound. So that helps with soundproofing. It also helps, with the energy costs because, wood kind of expands and retracts and can warp over time. This is, concrete. So I really like that. But I think over time, for the price that people are paying, we are an A-class property. Sometimes people want that more finished look, and we're not the vibe for everybody. So we are attracting a really small niche group of traveling professionals. So if somebody really wants a glamorous marble finish and really high-end finishes, then Connect is just not that place, because these are for like on-the-go people who are enjoying the amenities. They want to be outside their apartment.
Interesting.
But I hope the trend lasts.
All right, bouncing back to you, John. So traditionally, when we look at web conferencing, it is complex equipment, wiring. On the Cisco side, you could spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to build out a room. What trends are you seeing that are addressing these challenges, particularly when it comes to scalability, when we're talking about having larger shared spaces, more numerous shared spaces, or even smaller little pods like we saw on the cutout here? Does this scale to the point where it's possible to enable shared spaces in multifamily living?
Yeah, great point there. So what I'll say is, video has never been as pervasive as it is now, right? It's before the pandemic, video conferencing has been around for decades. We had schools and businesses investing in it, but it was $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a room. Telepresence, if anyone's ever seen a telepresence room, that was more like $200,000 or $300,000 per room. That's not scalable, right? So, and there was always the consumer-based video chat apps like FaceTime and Skype, and then there was enterprise, we were talking about this earlier, enterprise-grade video, and they were mutually exclusive, right? But now what we've seen over the last couple of years is that it's all one and the same. People are gonna join into meetings from their phone, their laptop, their tablet, a boardroom, a conference room, a pod, an audio, video privacy space, and it's all on the same platform. So there's no kind of difference between chat app, consumer type apps and enterprise grade. So with that, the technology that actually goes into the conference rooms has just been completely reduced in complexity as well as cost, most importantly. So, it's what we're putting in conference rooms these days is literally a fraction of the cost, sometimes about 1% of what it used to take to put a telepresence room in. And then the other thing there is you see organizations like Zoom embracing what we call Zoom for home, right? Of course, people can join and host meetings from their phone, their tablet, their laptop. Sometimes people get you hear the term Zoom fatigue. If you sit on 8 hours of Zooms a day, hunched over a laptop, sometimes that takes its toll on you. So what we've done with Zoom for Home is we've opened up the ability for people to leverage devices that might already be in their homes, for example. So a Facebook portal or a Google Nest Hub or an Amazon Echo Show. And so the kind of consumerization of video continues by bringing sometimes better experiences into the home. One good example is you can take a Facebook or Meta portal TV, which is a $100 device, put it on top of a TV in a living room or a communal space, and that little device, runs the Zoom application. It has intelligent camera framing, that has microphone arrays built into it, and you're up and running with a full Zoom experience in a large space. I mean, it just blows my mind to even think that would have been possible 4 or 5 years ago. So it is running on consumer devices. It is scalable now to the point where people are putting it in their homes and into communal, shared space, common areas, with this trend. I think it's really come down a lot.
For those who may not be familiar, when you talk about intelligent camera framing, what is that?
Yeah, great question there. So in video conferencing over the years, we kind of had some major transitions. So we started off with just manual video conferencing camera control, where someone is literally zooming in, panning, tilting. Maybe you have what we're called camera presets based on different parts of the room. We introduced speaker tracking and that type of technology about 6, 7 years ago, where it could hone in on the person speaking, right? And it can auto frame people into view and stuff like that. So that's really where this has gotten to at this point, where once you join into the meeting, you don't ever have to go find camera controls and zoom in and zoom out. The system will do all of that for you. And it started off in some of the more expensive conference rooms, but it's worked its way down even to some of the consumer devices that can automatically frame people and stuff like that. No external microphones, just all built into the system.
We saw that in our university setting, right when the pandemic hit, and during that first semester, everyone was sent home to online. When we came back the next semester to limited classrooms, only a small section of our classrooms had been enabled for video, and we didn't have webcams on the computer, so it was this immediate upgrade. And one of the things we had, I don't even know the manufacturer for this, but it was a little cube that sat on top of the screen that was a webcam, but it had that intelligent framing where that it had a pretty broad view, so you could be up on the board, you could be looking at it, and it would either find your face and kind of zoom in on your face, or if it felt like you were doing something on the board, it would zoom out. And it seems that we're seeing that a lot. And I forget the name, but I know Apple has rolled this out in their new iPads and their new cinema displays.
Awesome.
Do you want to remember what that's called? What their name for it is?
Yeah, I forget what their brand is. I think everyone kind of has different terms, auto framing, speaker tracking.
It's a wide view camera, but it's able to use face detection, multiple faces to try to make sure whoever's talking is in framed and framed well, rather than being just tiny little heads on the screen.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
Okay, jumping over, let's go back to gaming. And Blake, when you and I were talking about gaming, although we were focusing particularly on the shared space area, you had some specific comments about what could potentially be put into the units to help enable gaming as well. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. In speaking with some of my colleagues and clients, I think some of the sort of dead giveaway things are a high-speed internet connection, the opportunity to be able to plug in an Ethernet connection, flexibility in space as well. So turning a bedroom not just into a bedroom, but a bedroom and a gaming lounge. And then really just making sure that everything is convenient and has the ability to be able to be customized. Gamers spend almost $800 on their gaming PCs alone. So it's a very intense and personal experience. There are millions of different modifications that people can make to their setups, to their desk, and that's really important to them. So developers offering an opportunity for people to be able to customize their space or have built-in spaces where people can sort of plug in and play, pun intended, I think is a great opportunity for developers who are looking to get in front of this demographic.
Excellent.
I love that.
All right. Coming back to Carol, your turn on the hot seat. How are you engaging your team to showcase these shared spaces and create experiences that not only strengthen your community amongst your members, but also drive additional revenue and profitability?
Yeah, just circling back to what I was talking about earlier of using our open spaces is we have been partnering up with small groups where they just do so much social media for us and they're renting out. This is our amenity deck in Nashville for a blogger exchange. It's a bunch of bloggers that want to come together. They're all talking about us and they rented this amenity deck out for like $2,000 for 4 hours. And they brought in all their own stuff. It was really, not a lot of work for the property and cleanup and things like that. They just love this space, and more people that they're sharing are sharing about this and wanting to rent the space out for themselves. So by engaging with these smaller groups and really honing in on our niche groups and demographics of who we want to attract to our properties, it's just been light years, because instead of trying, and I made this mistake before, is trying to reach everybody. I want everyone to know how cool we are, but it's like so much work, and I'm really working harder, not smarter. And by going in with these smaller groups, they just fall in love with us. We create such great relationships, and then we're working with each other and supporting each other all over the country. That 100% goes back into working with local groups as well and supporting local businesses. Nashville is this really big small town, and it's all about supporting local. So by having local artists come in, doing local gallery nights, maybe having a brewery come in for a tasting, people love to display their art, and it brings people together. And again, what Connect is doing, our name is a little cheesy, but we are connecting people and we are creating these experiences. Here you can see how we use video. This is from our Vidyard app that I spoke about this morning, that we can show spaces really quickly, show available spaces, and we can also create a face, a rapport with that to put a human connection, since some of us are older millennials and we want to talk to people. So, using this to show off the space and honing in with these smaller groups, having these small event spaces has really engaged our entire staff, because now they're getting excited and hungry to go out and make relationships with local small businesses and put their own ideas into bringing people to the property. And this is marketing for us. This is bringing new people to the property, getting so much social engagement that's absolutely free. And then people get excited and want to rent the space for us as well.
So then how are you getting the word out to your surrounding neighborhoods?
Yeah, so just starting with all these small events and bringing people to the property, and as you can see, we've actually gotten a lot of media attention. If you go to our websites, Connect Phoenix or Connect Nashville, I have a whole press page, and people are just really taken to creating this one-of-a-kind residential co-working and apartment community. And we have lots of news people. I know they got me on the news down there. I was like, oh my gosh. But to really talk about what we're doing and how we're kind of breaking the status quo when it comes to typical multifamily conventional housing, and really putting, money where our mouth is and making this all work, and having different outlets to manage it all, such as Nexodus for our co-working software and our typical multifamily software as well, and gamification and other technologies to do the marketing. But it's word of mouth. And once these traveling healthcare people speak with each other, once all these small tech companies, they kind of have a wide range. It's really just building that relationship and word of mouth. I wish it was a lot more complicated.
If it works, it works.
It's great customer service, following up, following through, and having a great product to show and a great team. It's really about the service.
Sounds familiar.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so back to John now. What are some other trends you're seeing in the industry, particularly how they'll affect properties in these type of shared spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's not just about video enabling more spaces. That is certainly a big part of it now. Conference rooms have gotten smaller. There's less people. We see more huddle spaces and more of the pods and audio privacy rooms. But really going beyond that with more workspace solutions. So walking into a building and there's a virtual kiosk where you can tap a button and get connected to a virtual receptionist that could be anywhere in the world, on a different floor or working from home. The ability to see digital signage for upcoming events throughout the buildings. All of that stuff is relevant in traditional offices as well as shared spaces. I think one of the biggest trends I've seen across all sorts of industries and organizations is obviously rethinking their workspaces, but to the point where people aren't going into the building and going to a dedicated desk or workstation or cubicle, but moving more toward what is called hoteling or hot desking type models, where again, if they're hybrid and they're working part-time at home and they don't need to occupy a desk full-time. So with that, we had a lot of demand from customers to kind of help solve or address some of those challenges. So we created a workspace reservation solution that allows people to identify and reserve not just rooms, but even individual desks across a variety of experiences from the apps themselves, from an interactive kiosk in the building where you can walk up and see what's available, tap on a room or a desk, book it, scan a QR code, and go check in there. Lots of opportunity, I think.
I was like, oh my gosh,
with what you guys are doing, because it is, it's great for again, customers that occupy their own building, but it's just as relevant for these shared space models.
And to clarify, these are things Zoom is doing now, today.
Absolutely.
So if this is a problem you're having, come talk to him afterwards.
Yeah. And I'd say the other thing is that hybrid meetings are actually more of a challenge than people assume. Like we had in-person meetings down before the pandemic, 100% virtual meetings. Everyone got accustomed to that after 2 years of joining in, the Brady Bunch style where you can see everyone's faces equally. You mentioned this earlier, Brandon, like everyone had it down, the in-meeting chat, like they just had the whole experience down. Then they started transitioning some people back to the office, and you bring a conference room into one of those meetings. Well, I can see everyone who joined from home from their laptop, in their own square. But now all of a sudden that same size square is a conference room full of 7 or 8 people. So it's not equitable. Like I can't see everyone equally. So that was a major challenge as well. So with more meetings being hybrid in nature, we had to evolve as well, even with the camera innovations we were talking about earlier. So we created this solution called Smart Gallery, where now you put a conference room solution in there. It's just a single camera, setup. But what it does is it will frame individual faces of the people in the conference room and then represent them back into the Zoom meeting as separate participants. So exactly what you're talking about. So the end result is you still get that Brady Bunch style. Doesn't matter if people are working from home, in a conference room with peers, doesn't matter who's speaking. Everyone is shown the same, right? And that was something that I don't think ever would have become a need had the pandemic not kind of flipped things on its side. And so hybrid meetings, are a challenge, but I think we're making, a lot of progress in that area. But even the physical spaces, like I said, less large traditional conference rooms, more, flexible spaces, open collaboration areas to gather, more pods and huddle rooms. Even seeing customers kind of orient their conference rooms 90 degrees, instead of the long bowling alley view where you're trying to jam as many people into the room as possible, putting the displays and cameras on the side and getting better angles of people and optimizing. So even like trapezoid tables are, popular and stuff like that. So there's a lot of workplace design, components to it. There's the technology component. There's the furniture that goes into it. So it's an exciting time, I think, and just, it's going to continue to be a challenge, but again, nailing that balance of hybrid and helping our customers do it and clients do it is really important to us. It's something we're passionate about.
I was meeting last week in Pittsburgh with a company, and we had the CEO, had his executive team, and we had that exact challenge. It was on a web conferencing solution. We had a handful of people that were online. The rest of us were around a conference table. And the solution they had there, if you haven't seen one of these, really cool, was an owl that sits in the middle. About hopefully the price will come down. Last time I tried to buy one, it's about $1,000, but it has a nice big speaker so you can hear really well. It has a fisheye camera across the top that looks all the way around the room, and then using speaker tracking is able to identify when someone talks. It takes this wide range. Always show the wide range at the top of that particular window so you can see everyone around the table. But then below that, the bottom 4/5 of the screen, it will dynamically slice up depending upon who's talking and zoom in who's talking. You can have 3 people who have talked recently, and it'll zoom in on those 3 people's faces who were sitting around. And I think awesome. It is really cool. And then I think adding on to that, where if it's facial recognition or whatever, to be able to say who's the name underneath it is super cool technology that I can't wait for the future.
Yeah, Owl is one of a variety of our, we have a pretty open hardware ecosystem for Zoom rooms, and they're a partner of ours with their, camera technology and stuff. So it's been exciting to see different, approaches to innovation in that area.
And I think as we're still growing and really putting, this business model to work, because we're all kind of new to the co-working side, even though some people we brought on our team are from WeWork and things like that, but it's kind of like now outfitting the conference rooms, which people are renting on demand for $75, $100 an hour.
Yep.
We want to make sure that it's top of line. So
Yep.
That's definitely a great value add and something to invest in.
Yeah. And it needs to be flexible because not every meeting is a Zoom. We understand
Right.
that. So if you set up a Zoom room solution, it needs to be able to join into a Microsoft Teams meeting, a Google Meet, WebEx, BlueJeans, And so we really support open interoperability with that, because that's also super important, especially in co-working and shared spaces. You can't control what the members use for a service like this, so it needs to work with all of it. So.
In the corporate space, it was always frustrating to have that Cisco room that had the proprietary software that was only for that particular thing. Okay, as we're starting to wind things down, I'm going to bounce it back to Blake and ask Blake if the audience wants to be able to get more in tune with the gaming trends, where do you recommend they follow?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking to get more into the gaming space, whether from a brand that is looking to sponsor streamers or get involved in the esports world, or looking to just get in front of this demographic and learn more about them. Obviously, StreetSense is a great first step. We've been working with some of the top brands for several years now, so we're happy to share some opinions on how to get involved with that. I think there's a lot of great publications out there that you can start familiarizing yourself with, between PC Gamer, GamesBeat, Polygon, and a few others like that. I would really just try and immerse yourself also in Twitch. It's a huge social media platform currently owned by Amazon that allows people to live stream more than just games, but understanding Twitch and the habits of both streamers and viewers, I think, will be really important on understanding this burgeoning demographic of gamers and entertainment.
And you guys are doing some partnerships with Twitch as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And just embedding gaming into the Zoom experience, or embedding Zoom into the gaming experience in both directions there through what we call our Zoom apps. That's been a big ask, in the Twitch, side of that has driven a lot of demand. And a lot of our large enterprise clients are the big gaming companies of the world, and they've got thousands of our rooms deployed. And they're pushing us on that as well, as how do we bring gaming into Zoom rooms, and how do we bring the Zoom experience into gaming? So yeah, absolutely. Coming at it from both directions there, which is a really big opportunity. I couldn't believe that stat earlier, that gaming industry is bigger than the movie and the concert industry, I think, combined. That's just crazy to me.
It's crazy. It's nuts.
I could see it being really profitable for the student housing industry. That's kind of my background. And when I worked at RIT, I mean, people are all gamers up there. And we put a lot of, resources into that. But would you think it's better for more student housing or multifamily, kind of just, for the trends?
I think these spaces are going to have to accommodate, the stuff I've talked about here, the stuff that Blake has talked about, so if there's a display and a space that's going in there, that needs to be dynamic. That could be a gaming, area. That could be a place to sit down and join into a business meeting. Mm-hmm. It could be, a place for someone to gather, for a study group or something like that. So I think it's just the flexible, dynamic spaces, and it not being, here's our gaming room, here's our video conference room, here's our, study hall. These spaces could be dynamic, and it is cost effective at this point, like I was talking about earlier, to have, a smart TV running different applications on it for gaming and for Zoom and et cetera.
Yeah. All right, I've got a few more things for Carol, but we're at the point where for Q&A. So I want to first ask, by show of hands, do you have some questions for either John or Carol today? Okay, we've got one here. So we'll do a few questions, and then with whatever time we have left, we can do your videos that we've got in here.
We use Zoom a lot, like, our businesses would be nothing without Zoom right now, because we have 3 offices and we constantly communicating amongst the office. I'm in the design part of our business, and I'm curious if I actually have 2 questions. If you have any updates on your annotation button up there.
Yep.
Is it improving? By the way, Teams doesn't have it, so that's why we use you guys. And then the second question is, we have the owl, and we found that the audio is awful.
Oh no.
The video is fabulous, so people just don't do it. They all go to their desks, even though we're in our same office, they just go to their desks, put on their headset, and everyone can hear everybody clear. I'm just curious, you probably, owl is something that you may not control, but do you have any problems with that?
Yeah, no, great question. So I'll tackle the kind of annotation side of it first. And this is another area that we're hyper-focused on right now and we just revamped the entire digital whiteboarding and annotation experience in the Zoom platform. Brandon and I were talking about it. He's making me give a demo after the session. It has substantially improved. So it's gone to being more of a persistent canvas model where you can work on whiteboards over the course of projects, synchronous and asynchronous. People can add virtual sticky notes that can be color coordinated. And I think the big thing where your question's coming from is it's a little bit hidden and a little bit, in the past, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't really know where to look for the whiteboard or the annotate. It's really been brought front to center, literally in the last week or two as we've rolled this out.
Yeah, if you haven't gotten the new update, it starts flashing and saying, check out the new whiteboard experience. And we just finished up our semester that I haven't even touched it, but I'm like, ooh, that's why he and I were gonna talk. Like, I have so many needs at a whiteboard, and if you guys have solved some of those, I will be so happy. Yeah,
I think you'll really like it. So update the Zoom client. If you have Zoom rooms that have touch displays, bring those to life there. A lot of really cool functionality in there. Stuff that, if you're familiar with Mural or Miro, we've embedded that right into the Zoom experience. So again, another area where people might have been spending money on a separate tool, we're trying to consolidate and build as much as we can in. So I think, that'll be addressed. In terms of the kind of audio quality, every room and space is different, so there could be a number of reasons why, that particular owl system is not working there. We could definitely take a look at that. The good news is we have, a pretty open hardware ecosystem of, all-in-one appliances that the whole entire unit has cameras, speakers, microphones, everything built into it. But if you have, if you like the camera on the owl, but the audio is not great, then there's, different ways that are, you could definitely put a microphone array in there that would pick everyone up more seamlessly, and that would work dynamically with the Zoom room. So you could basically turn off the audio on the owl, but it's definitely something we want to troubleshoot and take a look into, because that likely shouldn't be the case. A lot of people do have good experiences with that. We certainly don't want people coming into the office, going right to their desk and going on Zooms all day, right? The point is for them to come together and have a good in-meeting experience as well, in person.
Thank you. Other questions from the group? If you have any, raise your hand. Jennifer will find you. We've got a few minutes left, and we still had one question we hadn't gotten to with Carol. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess this is for Carol. As we think about deploying technology in our common areas, every community, there's always one or two bad apples, and when you make technology accessible, it's a target for vandalism or theft. How does your company deal with that?
So you mean technology at the properties?
Yeah.
Concerning
Whether
Wi-Fi
it's
or
AV
security?
or a Zoom room, if you leave that technology accessible,
right.
You're going to show up one day and it's vandalized or missing. So.
Right. And just like gyms and all properties, things will, be picked up and walked away. We've lost several remotes. We have really nice leather coasters that we have in there. Things will walk away, but with all of our rooms, they are secured. We have cameras at all the entry points as well, and they're all locked with our Salto system. And you can use your Bluetooth phone once you get access to go into that room for a certain time period. And that's what I love about Nexodus, is that once we put them in there, we can turn on or off the Wi-Fi as well. And then we see how long they're in that room. And there's cameras in every room as well. But just like, anywhere, theft is kind of expected, but we haven't had I don't know of any major issues where TVs have walked out or chairs or anything like that, because it's always a well-lit space anyways. Our co-working is open 24 hours a day, and our security team, that sits at our concierge desk has all the cameras that they can look and kind of modify as things happen. But that is to be expected, and we can just do what we can to put the cameras, monitor the key locks, and make sure we're locking things up at night when the main staff is not there. Have you had the same issues or?
Cameras are fine, but it's for forensics after the fact. We've found that they're not really deterrents. I mean, we have video of people just walking out of fitness centers with sets of dumbbells and
Yeah.
like
I know.
as they're looking at the
happens.
camera, it's just So
I mean, it's going to happen with the pain of the industry, and people will steal things, people will steal packages, and it's just part of our industry, unfortunately. But we do what we can.
Yeah, on the tech side, we saw a big push. Like everyone wanted to have iPads in their conference rooms and boardrooms as the room controller, and that was a major challenge because it wasn't locked down and people could pick it up and they could use it for their conference room, but then slip it into their bag and next thing they know, they took it off. Sometimes these controllers look like iPads and they take them and it's like, I don't even know what they would do with it at home. It's not a tablet in the sense that they think it is. So we see a lot more of all-in-one devices that are mounted down to the table or to the wall, even the scheduling panels outside of the conference room. Even if customers do like to use iPads there are some pretty heavy-duty mounting solutions. Like Heckler is one that has some great iPad mounting tools for desks and walls. So there is a sense of try to lock it down as much as you can. I tend to shy away from things like even in small conference rooms. In a space like this, you need wireless microphones and everything. But that's another one that is, if you don't have a team that's making sure those batteries are charged or people could walk away with that stuff, that's another thing.
And just while it kind of came to me while you were talking is with the next set of software for our co-working entry space, you do have to have your license uploaded, and it also has your credit card on file too because you're paying for that space. So we could easily go back, look at cameras, document what was taken, and charge that person as needed. And we make also everybody sign a terms and agreements before they enter our co-working space as well, just like you would have in a typical lease for your property and company policies. It's a one-pager that we worked with our law firm on that we also collaborated from other co-working spaces as well. And it's a terms and agreements, and everybody has to accept that before they enter the space too. So pre-screening and having those in place will be helpful as well. Hope that answers your question.
And depending upon the shared space and upon your demographic, controlling access through either a PIN code, authentication, Bluetooth, a fob, for package pickup, one-time PIN. I think the more that you're making it so that and hopefully in the future it's just facial recognition to unlock the door, but then gives you some more accountability. And I think as the accountability goes up, I would imagine that the amount of theft would go down. All right. Well, please join me in giving these three a round of applause.
This has been fun.